not here to empower somebody. Women are already empowered. They
Right.
need to just recognize the fact that they have rights. They need to be able to exercise it. And to CEOs, and I said, no, I don't want your HR and CSR department to talk to me. You talk to me. Put money behind women and this movement, and we will show you where these women are. Just because you want a tick mark that you were on She the People talking about safety, I refuse to let you do that. We actually ask most people to say, you've come here today, don't follow what the rest of them do. Bring your ideas to us so we can learn from you. If you're a young woman trying to deal with what to do, why your voice is not heard, first make a lot of money, please. Particularly perimenopausal, menopausal has a significant role, if not the entire role, to play on everything that screws up a woman's life after 40. I really have a lot of angst about this issue, and that's one of the reasons why I started this, saying that let's start Gayatri and let women see the mirror.
Hi, Shelley, and welcome to the About Her show. This is a show where we largely get trailblazing women to share the story of their lives with us. To tell us about their successes, failures, challenges, ups and downs, all of it. Because, what happens is that there are so many women out there who have dreams, ambitions, but for some reason are not able to follow those dreams. So I just feel that, when they listen to a story like yours or of any other woman, they can kind of, get out of whatever is holding them back. And that I think is a big thing that we can do together as a community. And along with women, we also get men on the show because we believe that for a truly gender inclusive world, men and women need to be allies in this journey. Now, like I mentioned earlier, getting you on the show was, if I may say so, one of my dreams because what you are doing and what I'm doing, of course, I'm doing at a very, very small scale, but there are synergies there and there is a lot to learn from the work that you're doing, you have done. And I just felt that our audience would be, so wanting to understand you, your journey, what made you take up whatever you're doing. So once again, a very, very warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
I would like to start from the very beginning that you had a thriving career as a journalist before you found She the People and then She the People TV. So my question is, what was that defining moment that made you shift from reporting news to shaping a movement for women's voices?
I think the idea of She the People was rooted in what I was already doing. I was telling stories, but I couldn't see where the women were. I
Mhm.
was convinced that there were stories of women, but as a journalist, especially as a business journalist, I spend most of my time talking to men because in the last many decades of the world's industrialization, the business growth has been driven by people in black suits and ties. And most of these people have been able to not just capture the corner office, but also keep it with men. The question in my mind was, there could only be two scenarios: either that the men are ignorant about the potential women have, or women are full of self doubt about telling their own stories and what they're capable of. And I think both were compelling enough reasons to say, let's get off this mainstream world of broadcast journalism, go down and find where women are, and leverage the digital world in order to tell the stories of these women in a way that they can feel less inhibited about what they are worthy of, what they can do, and what they already are doing.
Hmm. So, yes, you have a point here because this is how we have known. And actually, I think somewhere even women had started accepting that this is the way to be. It's the men who get to rule the world because that's what we had seen. I mean, I really can't, pinpoint and say this was one gender's fault or the other one's. It was the way we had seen things all our lives. So, tell me, when you started She the People, what gaps did you see in how women's stories were being told, and how did you decide to fill it up?
So I started She the People back in 2015.
Mhm.
And this is the time that the world was beginning to sniff into what and how large the digital opportunity could be. And particularly because, women look for a field which doesn't discriminate them, but that was the real world. So the question was, could the digital world be a clean slate where they at least start out there with this ability to leverage the internet and not just tell their own stories, but perhaps even build businesses?
Right.
So I think the genesis of She the People and what Indian women were getting at in terms of the invisibilization of many, many decades was actually peeling off at the same time. Starting a movement is never easy. I think today, after 10 years, I can call it a movement. I think on the first day, it was just me and a website. On the second day, there were two of us and a website. And it took us some time to realize that, we can go from being just a platform where people are able to read about each other to or watch each other to where they can network with each other. So within 6 months, we created an external effort to go out there and get women under one roof. And this was possible because I started way before COVID, and there was a lot of recognition that not only do I want to know the story of, say, Sangeeta or some other successful or somewhat successful woman, but can I actually become like her? You started this podcast with this conversation that it's so important to get people who can go from just being an idea to something that's much bigger.
Right.
I think a lot of the times the idea is already embedded in the hearts and heads of women. They just don't know the bullet points, the toolkit, the nuts and bolts of it. And I think for me, that was the biggest recognition. I'm the kind of person who learns from whatever she's building very quickly to fix based on what my feedback from my consumers are.
Hmm.
And I think that's the most important way to build something that will last, whether it's an idea, whether it's a business, and so on. And so I think the perspective that I wanted on the table from building She the People was that women want to know a place where they can go and talk. They want a place where they can be showcased, but they definitely want to meet other women so they know how they can do it. And when I saw that this was not just a noun, but a verb, that's when I realized that the opportunity was much, much bigger than just telling stories. It was about making connections and creating a network where women could both learn and unleash. So as a community, we have, we now in the last few years call ourselves community tech because content is only a subset of it.
Yeah.
It's a technology powered community platform, which then has women from all over the world, all over India, and gives each other the access that they need. So I think as one builds these, there are very many questions that come to you. But I think one of the questions that has been perhaps an unsexy question I constantly ask myself, what do your consumers want? It's not about what you think. What do your consumers want? And I think I have tried to use that as a lever to constantly change.
Okay. I think, you've made so many pertinent points over here. Yes, telling women's stories is one part of the story, but then that's just one part. Women have to come together, they have to network, they have to learn from each other because we all have so many dimensions, so many things that we can share with each other, talents and ideas and ways of doing things and I always believe that women all over the world are basically, we're all the same. We may be going through different life stages, we may be at different ages, but our experiences are by and large the same. And if we cannot get together to share those experiences, to learn from each other, we definitely cannot expect the other gender to do that because they don't know what we go through in lives. So I think it's not only about stories, but it is about building a community and growing together. So yeah, so I totally kind of, resonate with this and I see where you're coming from. So tell me, like you mentioned, it's been 10 years since you started doing this. And of course, as you also said that, we start with an idea and over a period of time, we grow and evolve because there are learnings, there is feedback, there's, people telling us what we should be or should not be doing. So tell me, over the years, how has your idea of empowerment evolved through the lens of She the People and the many women you've interacted with?
So I think one of the things that's not evolved for me is the idea of empowerment. I was very clear from the day I started this that we're not here to empower somebody. Women are already empowered. They
Right.
need to just recognize the fact that they have rights. They need to be able to exercise it. And so before exercising is the concept of awareness, which had been absent because most people find it easier to hide information from women. When you hide from them, they don't know it. And when they don't know it, they don't have to act on it. I think a lot of the conversation across our world in the last few years has been about, now that she knows it, she's not going to do it. Because it's whether it's about a relationship, whether it's about housework, whether it's about taking harassment at work, whether it's about overworking yourself, whatever. Every time women were in the dark, they needed to be empowered because somebody else from the outside decided that this was an act of goodness. I really think that women are not looking for charity. They are empowered. They came to this world. They were created equal. Once they got around, the information set around them was biased. Now it's time to break down that information set, break down the opportunity set, which was biased or unequal, make the playing field leveled, and utilize every possible tool around us, whether it's AI technology, to conversations in the boardrooms, to other women and men who are sponsoring women to grow into their own. I think those things matter a lot more today. So I think the idea of empowerment to me is one thing that stayed with me very, very, it's the spine of it has always been very honest and very true to the fact that women don't need others to empower them.
That's true, actually. We just need to tell them that you are empowered, because I think so long we've been kind of, living in this, how should I say, under this impression that we are not, or we need to be pushed. In the sense we need to be empowered, I think we are already empowered. It's just that we have to be told. And yes, the playing field has to be leveled, because it isn't. And whatever we are trying to do is just that, basically, like they say, equity and equality. So this is what we are trying to do over here. So tell me, sorry.
No, I was just trying to make the point that, today, I think luckily we have enough ways by which women can get beyond the echo chamber that they have been stuck in. Right. And this is an absolute must for women to be able to unshackle themselves from what have been, whether policies or behaviors that have been typically the ones that hold them back. I hear this a lot on my DMs, and I see them on my comments all the time on Instagram, on LinkedIn, that what you do at She the People or at Gayatri, which is a platform for midlife and menopause, that you're essentially, telling women that they can do what they want. Who says that? I get a lot of criticism for that. And I always wonder that why should men and some women find it so difficult that there is a structure around them that's breaking, right? The patriarchal system is so hard a crust around us that we find it very difficult to unshackle from it. Yes. And when we try to do that, you're always going to get criticism for, oh, you're making women think that they can do whatever they want. That is the truth. Women should be able to do what they want. If my daughter today has the right to say she doesn't want to do a certain thing and she wants to do a certain thing, and not be sort of bogged down by the definitions of what a woman can or can't do, then absolutely she should have a level playing field. But the minute one tends to speak like this, or you always get people who will say that you're ruining the fabric of society. And I can't tell you how amused I remain with that terminology in our world.
But that's true. I mean, not maybe to that large an extent, but I also go through this because you're doing something which, basically you are, how should I say, shattering the harmony, within families, because you are telling women that, like you said, they can do anything that they want. But the point is just because you keep somebody shackled, it doesn't mean there is harmony. You don't know what they're going through when they are, holding themselves back, or they're restricting themselves. There could be harm in different ways, which you may not be able to sense it or see it, but in the way your family is growing, your children, it may have repercussions everywhere. So just because you don't see it or you don't want to see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's very good point.
So very important for everybody to have that feeling of liberty, freedom, and this is what we've all striven for. I mean, all these wars of independence have all been about liberty, equality. So why not give it to women as well, who are like half the planet?
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So tell me, as you said, you started this movement almost 10 years ago, which was in 2015. And of course, you were building a woman-centric digital platform. So I'm sure initially it would not have been that easy to do that. So if you could share some of the toughest challenges you faced as a founder, and how did you, navigate around those challenges?
So, building a women first platform was definitely not easy back in 2015. I think it still is not. The truth is that when you're building something that involves women, for most people it seemed like niche. But we just talk about if you're going to be half the country, half the population, you're 750 million, which is like 2.5 times of the United States and 3 times the size of, whatever, 7 times the size of Japan, twice the size of Brazil. I mean, we're looking at a country which has more women than a large chunk of countries around the world. Why is this such a big missed opportunity? I think there were lots of challenges, but I think one of the things about challenges is that if you don't go and meet the norm, which is build a charity business, build an NGO, build a CSR department, go and talk to HR. If you don't think like that, you are basically saying, I'm going to just play, I'm going to throw caution to the wind and deal with whatever this challenge is, because my challenges were unending. So I was conscious of the fact that I would both not just leverage but utilize my presence in this world, which at that point was being one of India's top television journalists, to change that narrative. I went to CEOs and I said, no, I don't want your HR and CSR department to talk to me. You talk to me. Put money behind women and this movement, and we will show you where these women are. Finding women around the country and showcasing their potential takes money, takes energy, takes teams, right? And to build all of this, I needed to fund this entire process. So I literally went and said that I'm not giving you the option of sending me down to a department that will empower this idea. I believe that you need to put your voice behind. And I would say 1 out of every 5 would listen, 2 out of 20 would say, okay, I'll give it a shot. And I know that this is not easy for everyone. Not everybody starts off a brand new career, a brand new piece, which is so unheard of before. This was India's first full stack platform for women. It's not easy when you are coming off something which is not already established. So I'm thankful that I was very, very established on the national scene. But I do thank myself for getting out of that national scene too, and say, I'm actually going to leave all this glitz and glamour of 9 p.m. news and jump into this, because if somebody has to jump into it, it has to be when you're at the top, because that's when you're going to get some people convinced. And that's exactly what happened. I went to Anand Mahindra, who over a very short lunch said, I'm going to back you. And the second person I met with a serious business plan was Rajiv Anand, who was then Axis Bank and today runs IndusInd. And he said, I will back you. And I think that really made a difference. And then, of course, there were many men and women who backed me along the journey. And I always say that you're not backing me, you're backing this entire movement that will change the way Indian women see themselves. And that one could look at as one of the biggest challenges, but also another one that could say that, sometimes you've got to just put benchmarks that you're not willing to negotiate.
Yes.
And the minute you do that, you start finding peace in little that can have more impact rather than a lot that'll have less impact.
Yes, that is so true. I mean, like building a movement is not easy. And of course, the fact that you were at a certain level, yes, did help, but that does not mean that you did not have the hard work. You did not have to do the hard work and meet people. And like, I'll share something with you that, so I am working, on this doctorate on gender diversity in the corporate sector of India. And, one of the things that we realize is that unless it's a top-down thing, in the sense that people at the top support what is to be done, and when it comes for gender diversity, it's not going to work. So yes, everybody, and especially people at the top, people who have the voice, the ability, the position to, not only make the point, but push that point, unless they are on the same table as you, it is difficult to work. And the fact that you got these people to understand what you were doing and back you, I think that was, a challenge, but yet you found a way to navigate that. So yeah, kudos to you for doing that. And of course, you continue.
I just want to say one thing that, in hindsight, it all looks lovely and easy, but I just wanted to say that To all of those who are probably thinking, oh, it's going to be so tough, I think it's just worth trying. It's just worth trying. I think people come around. And today, certainly people come around. I mean, we're all helping a bunch of women. I can't say I'm helping everyone who comes to me, but I make a pool of people who I'm willing to help and park time and give back. And I think it's a good thing that all of us are willing to do that.
Absolutely. I completely agree. So tell me, on the one hand, you are about storytelling, advocacy, and then this is also something like you said, you just cannot run a business like this out of thin air. We do need the money to do this. So, there could be a space or there could be a time where your purpose and profit could collide. So how does one kind of, again, deal with this sort of, how should I say, two opposing interests?
I think it's a great question, but I do want to say I did not let that happen.
Okay.
I did not let my purpose and profit collide. And the reason I say this very, very clearly is because this is a question that comes to my table a lot. I am faced with this dilemma that I have a safety campaign running. I'm the biggest cab company in the world, but all I have to give you is, some basic peanuts to go and talk about safety and our investment in safety. And we said, we don't want this. It could have paid a few salaries, so we don't want this. So we respect you being the largest company, but if you really want to walk the talk on safety, you got to put some serious money on the table so we can have a serious conversation with a wide breadth of audience. Just because you want a tick mark that you were on She the People talking about safety, I refuse to let you do that. Because I will not shortchange my audience, my community to believe that you guys are doing a great deal for safety when you actually are just not. Putting out ad campaigns is not doing what you intend to do.
Right.
That's giving money to ad agencies. But then what happens after the ad? You give money to YouTube and Facebook to rile up your views. Then what happens? How did anybody get impacted in this? You're telling us what you want to. So I think that this is a question that comes, and sometimes I'm okay with less money than bad money.
Right.
We've said no to Fair and Lovely, very clear. And I know two women's platforms who secretly take a lot of money from them. We just don't. Neither behind the scene, nor in front of the scene. Right? We don't take money to talk about Fair and Lovely. Don't.
Right. So I think certain principles, certain things we have to be clear about, that this is what we will do and this is what we will not do, and then just take it as it comes. Right?
So I think the thing about principles is that you can't pick and choose your principles based on opportunities. You have to have principles, like a value system. If you have your principles, then you've got to stick to them. Because if you're not sticking to them, honestly, at some point, your bluff is going to be called out. And this is what I love about today's generation. In the last 3 years, the crop of people who've become after that age where they recognize the importance of diversity, and more important than diversity is just individual right to choose, I think are changing the narrative. I don't come across young people who are obsessed with brands. I don't come across people who love somebody unconditionally. I like the fact that people love some things about some things, because then they know, I like this thing that you guys did, but maybe I could have done something else differently. Then I know these people are putting their brains in there, right? Just to be blind about something is not okay. And that's what I think is like the journey of She the People in the last decade, from being somebody who was first going and knocking all doors to say, if you are a woman, you should know this. This is how we can help you. This is what we can do. To people around the world coming saying, I want to be on your platform. Can you help me, carry this message forward to a specific idea? I think those things have really helped us understand the reward for all the risk we took.
Yes. So I think that clarity of thought when it comes to you, the person who's behind it, that I think is very, very important. Because if you are clear about what you want and what you don't want, then I think that message just gets, passed around, and everybody else who's associated with it also understands that in a way, these are the do's and don'ts, right?
So it's a good way to think of it. I think leadership is always important about how they draw the lines and what kind of room they allow for their teams to flourish in. But I have to say this with my entire pride, which is that I love the fact that I have worked every single year out of these 10 years with people who are much younger, far more progressive, far more welcoming to different ideas and thoughts on the table than I was. I have always had teams that have gone out there, experimented, tested, thrown new ideas at the audience and seen how they react and build stuff around it. So while it's important for leaders to be there and build some construct, I think a lot of the success of She the People today has been how little construct we made. We stuck to principles and value systems. We didn't draw lines within which everybody was expected to draw or color. We actually asked most people to say, you've come here today, don't follow what the rest of them do. Bring your ideas to us so we can learn from you. And each time we did that, not only did we double our audience, we improved our engagement, our social went up, we bloomed in new directions. Just in the last 6 months, I've had 2 team members who've just joined us. And this was exactly the mandate. Please do what makes you excited. Don't do what we've been doing so far. And on one particular page called Girl Talk India, which is our page for young women who have just sort of at the edge of college, we've gone from some 70,000 followers to 170,000 followers with heavy engagement levels. The same thing happened at She the People. We were struggling around this 1.5 million figure. And then another woman came up with such different ideas, and then she took it straight surging up to 1.7, 1.8 million. Now, why am I saying following is a reflection of the fact that people are sticking around with what you're putting out? It's not because of any other reason. And our engagement levels are so brilliant. I give these examples because when I talk about team, people are expecting actionables. These are results of actionables. These are measurable numbers. We are seeing such a delightful community come through with these 2 young women who've joined. And I think it's not just them, like, the ones who are there move to other things. People are never told if you've got an interview with Madhuri Dixit, I am going to do it. No. There's a young girl out of Uttarakhand, Nainital, who went and did this interview because she got the interview. Who am I to take away her interview? And why is she too young to interview? Provided she's willing to put in her hours to do the hard work, to sound right as one should, and have the knowledge that a She the People correspondent is expected to have. So I like the fact that we create sort of an open space. Say, come, let's see what you can bring.
Yeah, I think that's very, very important because then you're giving that freedom to them. The freedom of thought, emotion, everything, and then they come up with ideas because I think after a certain while, everybody has limitations in terms of what we can think and how we can think. So you get fresh ideas, fresh people. Obviously, there's going to be a different perspective, and we all grow when we have, when we have different perspectives. Okay. So tell me something. Now you've come thus far in these 10 years, and of course, you're only going to grow bigger and bigger. So what advice would you give to women who want to lead such kind of a change, but they struggle with either self-doubt or societal expectations? Because I think women are, a mix of the two. We do have a lot of self-doubt, and which stems largely from societal expectations. But if you're caught between the two, what do you do?
This is a complex question, and I'll answer it not in one simple way. Let's just unpack it. When women are stuck in situations, this could be financial, this could be relationship led, this could be career led, this could be in the office space. I think a lot has to be done with practicality. I'm a fan of raising your voice when nobody will throw you out of your house. I don't recommend raising your voice if you will be thrown out of your house. Instead, I recommend finding a different way to try to make that point. So make that point or find consensus. I think it's imperative for us as women to recognize that we will be in transition with respect to people and society for decades to come. As you see, we don't seem to be the only country struggling with it. United States has gone all the way to a liberated world and come back to a conservative world. And this is happening in various parts of the world. So if you're a young woman trying to deal with what to do, why your voice is not heard, first make a lot of money, please. So that once you have the agency and your accounts are full, if you walk out of things, you don't land up at the street. I did that. I am not giving a lecture without experience. I worked hard like how for 20 years of my life. At that point, I mustered courage to say, I can now step out because money now gives me the power to say no. And now I will build something and see if I can earn money through that too. So I think there is going to be struggle. I don't have a one type of solution. A lot of the solutions are what are you willing to let go and what are you willing to suffer? And I'm being very conscious about using the word suffer. All of us suffer at some counts. But suffering of some of our personal situations, I think, is happening even to men. Because not everybody is liberated in its true sense. But could you find the more important battles to fight and then fight them sensibly and practically? That's the approach. We will have to deal with society for some time to come. If your house is, I hear this a lot. Everybody in my house is aligned. My parents are fantastic. They raised me as like a they never treated me like a traditional girl child. They did this, they did that. But then, I landed up in society. And now I have to deal with this shit, right? Same thing people say, oh, I ended up in this marriage thinking I'd be the daughter of the household, but actually they treated me like a woman and now I'm landed up in society. So I think we all will land up in some really complicated situations. But complexity is what also tests your ability to be sound, practical, and also find the longevity journey towards whatever your campaign with yourself is. You want to live a life of liberation, you want to change the next generation. Lots of women come to me saying, my mother treated me like shit. I'm not even talking mother-in-law here. Young girls come and talk about how their mothers treated them like they shouldn't have been treated, like they were caged, like Gungi Gudiya. Now, there is an opportunity for you to change this for the next generation, either as an elder sister or a mother or somebody else or an aunt, whatever. Change it, right? I think there has to be some amount of practicality in this because we cannot be stupid.
Right.
When we are trying to make change. Change for long term has to be done carefully so that it sticks.
Right. That I think is very, very important. I mean, you can't kind of think, live in this la la land where you think that just, a magical wand you can wave and, things will be set right. It doesn't work like that. You have to have, like you said, the agency, the wherewithal, the ability to deal with what will come your way because things will come your way no matter what. That I think is important to understand. So, Shelley, there's one thing that I've been noticing in the recent, few months, days, this new initiative that has been launched by you. I mean, maybe I noticed it later, but yes, it's of great interest to, I think, to every woman after a certain age, and which is, of course, focused on menopause. Now, before we get into the, details of it, my first question is that what prompted you to take up this cause at this stage of your journey?
So I think for me, it's very important to recognize the gaps in the needs of women, which is really how I've approached the people as we've been talking through this podcast. And it's evident to me that in a typical way, it wasn't just a symptom of Bollywood, but even society, that after a woman has had her kids, she's rendered as if she's done her job. And actually, when you look at careers of women, they are productive, they are smart, they have experience, they have wealth of knowledge, and that's exactly the time the ageism around us just sort of behaves as if those women don't matter, because everything is vanity, everything is youth, everything is glow and all of that.
Yeah.
And I think it's time for me to ask this question that just before I even get into the health side, why are women above 40 sitting at home mostly? Why are they having an aspirational gap when they could go from being, the second in command to the in command number one? Why is it that women are like, oh, I'm tired, now become an empty nester, I'm just so exhausted, I have no energy left, I don't want to do this. And I'm thinking, a lot of women, and I'm guessing this number will be extremely vast.
Yeah.
That probably 1 in 30 odd women must be saying, okay, fine, I'll pull through. Right? Maybe it's 1 in 100. It's like literally a needle in a haystack. And I think there is a problem here, and that problem, one, is not recognized, two, is not addressed, and three, is completely unacknowledged in the system. And I started looking for this problem. And then I was like, wow, this was that simple. I had to just go to figure out that women's health, particularly perimenopausal, menopausal, has a significant role, if not the entire role, to play on everything that screws up a woman's life after 40. And then she's stuck with relationships that seem more complicated. She's got kids who are hormonal and teenage and whatnot and whatever else, or leaving, flying the nest. And then she's got a career, or she's just feeling overwhelmed. What is this feeling? Is there a name for it? And when I discovered that menopause is the name for this feeling, and then I figured that it can be managed.
Yeah.
Wow, I was like, seriously? I mean, women are just wasting half their lives, more than half their lives, if one goes by today's life expectancy, by not managing perimenopause and menopause and just giving up on life.
Right.
I'm writing a book about exactly this, and I am shocked to meet people who have become sadhvis in the process. There's no harm in becoming a sadhvi out of choice.
Yeah.
But thinking that your life was over at 45 and you give up and now you do temple tours because you feel that that's all your life is worthy of. Sure, pray. But don't give up your life because you think you're a waste to society. What is this nonsense?
Actually, again, this is like we see this happening all around us, but where does it need to do it? Because I think this is the time when, like you said, the wealth of experience, the maturity, the wisdom that only comes with years is what we have with us. So why don't we capitalize on that? And, yes, you're an empty nester, but there are so many things. I mean, just think of this as an opportunity to do something which you were not able to do all these years because you were raising kids, because you were doing other things. Now you have all the time in the world to do everything that's close to your heart. So in that sense, again, I like completely resonate with this because like I also picked up all these things post 50. I think my 50th was a big turning point for me because that's when I started doing everything from my doctorate to my podcast to my writing, everything, because I suddenly had so much time and I just didn't want to waste it, going here and there, meeting up friends. I like doing that, but not all the time because I feel there has to be some passion, something that, was lying somewhere buried deep inside you. Now is the time to pull it out and start working on it. So yeah, I think we need to do this, and whatever, has to be done to deal with it, whether it is, our health or our attitude or whatever it is, we need to just catch the bull by the horns. I mean, that's what I feel.
Yeah.
So, but yes, so you started doing about it. And yes, there are lots of conversations happening around this nowadays as well. But even then, menopause is something which is still a taboo topic in our society. Most people don't want to talk about it. Most people don't want to acknowledge this. So first of all, my question is, and this is not only men, it's women largely, So my question is, why do you think it is still a taboo? And also, what are certain misconceptions or myths that you've encountered around it? And how can we start, working on those, reframing them, or just dispelling those myths?
So I think this is not something that's about changing society or a lofty aim at something that requires us many decades to work on.
Right.
We can fix this too. It is a health intervention. And for that, we should not sit and wait for things to happen. So I think it's not good enough to have or change the conversation. It's important to have solutions on the table. And which is why when we started Gayatri, in order to focus on midlife and menopause for women, we realized that we cannot just give them conversations. This has to go beyond the cocktail party hour of saying, oh, my hot flashes and my something else. I need to figure out what can we offer women by which they literally grab it with their hands, have it, whether it's an applicant, whether it's a consumable, and get better. I think that's the point. The conversation problem in this area is, yes, there are important issues around the taboo and that we need to take them away. But sometimes women are so comfortable just having the conversation. And I really get annoyed with that. That's not your destination. Your destination is, how do I feel better? I get more out of my day. I have more energy, fewer energy crashes. I have the ability to stay more alert as well as have fun.
Right.
These are important things. We are not focusing enough on that. Today as well, we do hear a sporadic spattering of conversations among the Indian women through Indian experts. But 99% of our conversation is being driven by white Americans who are telling us what menopause is. And their story and ours is different. Did you know that midlife and menopause, i.e., hormonal changes of women, are hugely dependent on which longitude, latitude you are set in as a country? What kind of cultural upbringing you have and what kind of support system your country offers. The food that you eat has a direct impact on the hormone secretions in your body. So when we listen to an American woman talk about her dealing with an estrogen patch here and today she feels like a queen, it ain't happening in your country right now. We
Right.
have rules about patches, we have rules about transdermal, we have rules about what stuff you can put in. There are herbs that are absolutely allowed in the United States. There are herbs that are just not allowed in India over the counter. So we have to stop being just notional about the conversation on midlife menopause. We need to become actionable about it. And this is my cry more with women than men. And you said this in your question, sometimes women are more ignorant about this. I actually stand myself with my team at many of our stalls when we are doing promotional activities. A man will come and tell his wife, get this, you've been suffering for a while, see if it works. She's like, let's just go around the park and see what I'll have to buy, my candles, my pickles, and I'll come back and decide. And she's paying a fraction of what she's paying on her outfit. Average outfit dresses by women who are aware of menopause, 14,000 up to 40,000 bucks.
Right. Right.
Average bottle of capsules or a packet of protein blend or a nutrition supplement, 1,500 bucks. Women are not giving them the luxury of feeling better.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
want to go through the pain and trap themselves in clothes that'll cost a lot and apparently hoping they'll look good. I actually have a lot of angst about this issue, and that's one of the reasons why I started this, saying that let's start Gayatri and let women see the mirror.
Right.
Because I can see a 40% repeat rate on my products.
Hmm.
That's phenomenal for a company that's not even done branding.
Right. Right. Right.
They've got to get their system sorted.
Yes.
And then one woman gets it, she feels better, 10 other follow. Why? Because she's like, stop talking, start doing.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I think this is like such a critical thing, because you see so many women, most women talking and not doing. I think this is where the mindset needs to shift, that you have to do it. You have to, like I said, catch the bull by the horns yourself. Don't expect some divine intervention to take place and don't blame the rest of the world for it. You can take charge and you can do it. And I think, yeah, that's what needs to be impressed upon, needs to be, they need to be convinced about it and they need to be told. Yeah. So tell me, of course, you're doing a great job of it, but of course, all of us in our own ways need to do it. So my question is, how can workplaces and media play a more supportive role in normalizing conversations around women's health and aging?
So we now currently work with close to 50 companies in order to improve their entire protocol around menopause and midlife.
Okay.
This is important because companies have traditionally, and to a great extent even now, for them, women's health is a tick box. It is essentially saying you have access to a gynecologist. Now, we work in a country like India where things will take some time to change, and gynecologists are not geared up because in their entire MBBS, gynecology was 2 chapters if they didn't choose to be a gynecologist. And if they did choose to be a gynecologist, 95% of their course was spent on how to create and manufacture a child out of a woman. So if you're going to have a world that has constantly seen women as walking wombs, you're going to pivot both energy and money onto that.
Right.
A lot of the gynecologists, when I was beginning to figure out what's going on at 40, I said, let's just get all checks done. I walked into the room to a gynecologist. She said, welcome to the worst decade of your life. I'm like, thank you. That doesn't make me feel very good, but are you going to tell me anything after that? She's like, thankfully, gynecologists have no role to play until you have a complication. So if you don't have a complication and you're going through your perimenopause or hormonal changes as it is, your answer is not even there with the gynac. She will just give you one lecture. And after that, say, please find somebody else to give you the coaching. What you need are menopause coaches. You need conversation. You need to be guided on what to have on the food. So yes, a combination of coaching, nutrition, meal plans, and supplements is what helps women go through. Our own stupidity is that we constantly go to a gynecologist, come back disillusioned because the gynecologist will give you primrose oil in a capsule and say, have it, feel good. That's it. And that doesn't give you the solution. So
Yeah.
you're essentially landed up, and I heard this from a top-notch corporate woman who manages a very large team in a multinational. She said, I am getting so angry at my team that I can't even take the excuse that I am menopausal. She said, how many people will want to listen to me? Eventually, they'll just start calling me that woman is menopausal.
Right.
You see the stigma around it?
Yeah.
And that woman is desperate. She's not saying, I don't want to do anything about it. She just doesn't know because the gynecologist gave her a strip of primrose oil in a capsule. And I just think that that is the change that Gayatri is trying to exact. When
Right.
people come to Gayatri, they have handheld support. They have reminders. They get to talk about the rage that they're going through. They got to talk about some of that, and then they also get to eat something that just makes their life a lot better. Because you're raging because of what's happening to hormones. If you keep your hormones in check, your rage doesn't happen. So
Yeah.
common sense is what I appeal to every woman who's going through her peri and menopause.
And then, of course, the workplaces can be more supportive, and maybe media can also play a role in telling people, first of all, that you can fix it. That thing that this cannot be done. I think a lot of women just learn to live with this, that this is a stage of life. I have to learn to live with it. I think somewhere that awareness needs to creep in. And then, of course, comes action, where again, I think women's mindsets need to be, at least you can be told that, yes, you can change. Yes, you can do something to fix what you're going through.
So the entire movement to support fertility and pregnancy during through workplace insurance didn't happen because some noble CEO woke up one day and said, "Okay, here's what I'm giving women, something that they can sort of pay for through the company." It came because women and families revolted and said, this is an important part of our lives. As a society, we deserve to have space, time for raising our children and producing them. And you ought to pay for it if you have me as a worker for so long. So
Correct.
my point is, this is not going to happen because one noble CEO in his room will say, hey, listen, I'm distributing menopause coupons for you guys to, get yourself some remedy. It's going to happen. It happens from the demand side as well. As working women watching your show, they should be going to their office and saying, why aren't you giving women who are going through their perimenopause and menopause some sort of a service that allows them to navigate this?
Yeah.
That's how it will happen. I think it is kind of lofty in a world today thing that this thing should happen on a supply side. The demand will drive everything. That's the rule of the market.
Absolutely. I completely agree. The demand has to be there because till the time we don't voice it, you can't expect the world to know what you're going through, or you can't expect the world to provide you with something if you don't say that this is what I need. So we have to step up. Yeah.
The starting point of this exercise is that women need to be not in denial of having perimenopause and menopause.
Right.
Just because you go and recognize that you have it, you don't become a burden on society or yourself.
Yep.
Well, you've got it.
Yes.
Right? Thank God it's not fever, because then you would be bedridden.
Yeah.
I just think that people should recognize that the repercussions can be sometimes very debilitating. Please recognize it. The more you stay in denial, and the more foundation you slap on your face, and the 10-step skincare routine you do, it will stop like a cliff one day and make you feel terrible. So start preventative stuff now.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Okay. So, Shelly, you have, across your career, you've built platforms, and of course, you've done so much to give women visibility, what they're facing, everything from Gayatri and everything else that you've done. So, out of all the things that you have done, what is that one impact that you're most proud of today, both personally and collectively, as the one behind She the People?
I think it's a very tough question, but I'm most proud of the fact that we are building movements that women need and deserve to have. They rightfully deserve to have. And I think the fact that we went from one person to a 6 million community, or we went from one idea, one interview to a movement, I always say that I am not She the People, you are She the People. And that's why we exist today. Not because we go out there and talk about ourselves, because you think this is yours. And I think there is no greater reward than that.
Yes, that I agree, because like coming from the same space, I totally get it. It's not about one person, it's about everyone together, because that's how movements get built and that's how, they see success. So, what's next for She the People? And of course, the menopause advocacy. I mean, what would you like to see? I mean, what kind of change in the next 5 years for the women in India?
I think health is going to be the country's biggest agenda.
Okay.
I am also very excited to see that the government will start moving on it in a more meaningful way. Overall health, which is to say, let's go beyond pregnancy needs of women and start thinking of all their needs. I am convinced that as more and more women become aware of opportunities and are able to access the job market, they will take better decisions for themselves, for their families, for their children, but all of it will be rooted in being healthier themselves. I think that for me is one of the most exciting journeys, and this I'm seeing across She the People and Gayatri, because there is truly no value in creating value if you are not healthy enough to do it. So, at the end of the day, the next 5 years will be determined by a fast moving change on the health front. Where we will all struggle is how much backlash we will get. We will get backlash because we will want to spend more on ourselves. We will get backlash because we will make choices that don't depend on others. We will get backlash as women because we choose to voice ourselves. We will get backlash because countries around the world are becoming more and more conservative,
Yeah.
and diversity budgets are being cut. So today, I think we find ourselves 2 steps ahead, 1 step back, and that puzzle will always be around. It's not easy when you are the second sex for the last few centuries, maybe since Stone Age, really. But yeah, it's not easy.
It isn't. It isn't. But I think the desire, the will to do something about it, I think that is the starting point, and we are kind of like quite far ahead as far as that goes. Okay. So, Shelley, while we've come to the end of the conversation, we just have one last thing, which is the rapid fire round. So, five
Okay.
quick questions, 5 quick answers, no time to think. So, are you ready for it?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, the first one word that defines She the People.
Relentless.
Yes, I agree. All right. The next one, a stereotype about women you wish would just vanish.
That they don't want more.
Yeah, correct. So, Shelley, my next question, the most inspiring woman you've interviewed so far.
The most inspiring woman I have not interviewed so far is the woman whose story is yet to be told. And she is likely to be the most inspiring woman I need to interview now.
Yes, very well said. I think that's really well said. All right, the next one, a health habit you swear by.
Spend 50% of your money on your own health. Wear the oxygen mask before you can make others wear it.
Okay, right. And the last one, if you could give a piece of advice to your 20-year-old self, what would that be?
I never want to be my 20-year-old self. I love my 45-year-old self. I think I am wiser, smarter, hotter, clearer, and raring to go than I've ever been in my life. I would tell my 20-year-old, you could do much better. You could be less fearful, more ambitious, and less conformist. May I grow older, smarter, and everything else as I age. I am looking forward to it.
Well, what should I say? This is like, it's resonating in every possible way, because I think the same way as you do. I just feel that, age is a number which speaks of your, like I said earlier, experience, wisdom, clarity, fearlessness. There is so much to it that I think the older we get, the better we become. So there is, yes, we can just tell our 20-year-old selves that you will become definitely a better, fearless, and so many other things that you will become. So just be raring to go in that sense. So, Shelley, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I don't think there was any word that I could not relate to, could not resonate with. It was like as if, somebody was speaking what I love to speak about. And coming from you, of course, like I said, dream come true. Thank you so much for being on the show. I'm sure our viewers, our listeners, our readers are going to gain a lot from what you've shared with us.
Thank you so much. Grateful. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for tuning in to the About Her show. If you enjoyed this episode, there's plenty more from where that came from. Our previous guests have shared some amazing stories, so be sure to catch up on past episodes. To keep up with our inspiring conversations and to never miss an update, hit subscribe, rate, review, and share the love. Follow us on social media for some great content, and don't forget to check out our website www.aboutherbysangeeta.com for stories that resonate, inspire, and empower. Know a remarkable woman or an inspiring man blazing a trail? We'd love to hear from you. Drop us a note at web.abouther@gmail.com and let's bring their story to life on the About Her show.